The divorce papers felt like ice in Naomi's hands. She sat in the sterile office of Patterson and Associates, her fingers trembling as she stared at her husband's signature. Gerald's handwriting looked confident, almost celebratory. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Beverly, watched her with practiced sympathy. "Mrs. Thompson, I know this is difficult, but we need to discuss the settlement." Difficult. That word felt too small for what Naomi was experiencing. 3 months ago, she had owned a successful restaurant. 3 months ago, she had a husband who told her he loved her every morning. 3 months ago, her life made sense. "He's offering you $15,000 in the car," Beverly continued, sliding another document across the mahogany desk. "Given that the restaurant funds went toward medical expenses during the marriage, the court considers that a joint decision. You won't be able to recoup. I sold my restaurant to save his life." Naomi's voice came out flat, emotionless. She had cried so much in the past weeks that her tear ducts felt permanently dry. "I sold roots and flavor. 10 years of my life. $400,000. And he's giving me $15,000? Beverly's expression softened. "I'm sorry. I truly am. But technically the medical debt was joint marital debt. The money from the restaurant sale paid that off. In the eyes of the law. In the eyes of the law, I'm an idiot." Naomi laughed, but it sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Tell me something, Beverly. Did you know about her? About Veronica?" The lawyer hesitated, then nodded slowly. Mr. Thompson's attorney disclosed the relationship. "They want to marry quickly." Marry quickly. Of course they did. Veronica Sterling, the real estate queen of Chicago, wasn't the type to wait. She had probably already picked out her dress, booked the venue at some exclusive country club. Naomi wondered if they would serve good food or just expensive food. There was a difference. "When did you find out?" Beverly asked gently. "About the affair?" Naomi closed her eyes. The memory burned like acid. 2 weeks after his surgery. He was recovering in our bedroom. I brought him soup. Homemade chicken soup with the recipe my grandmother taught me. He barely touched it. Said his stomach wasn't right. Then his phone buzzed. He asked me to hand it to him and I saw the message preview. "Can't wait until you're well enough to leave her. I love you." From Veronica. What did he say when you confronted him? The truth. All of it. They'd been together for 14 months. She has money. Real money. He said the surgery gave him a second chance at life and he wanted to spend it with someone who could give him the lifestyle he deserved. Naomi opened her eyes and stared at Beverly. "I gave him his life back and he said I wasn't good enough to share it with." Beverly picked up a pen, clicking it nervously. "I've been a divorce attorney for 20 years, Naomi. I've seen a lot of terrible people do terrible things. This ranks up there. Will I survive it?" Naomi asked. "Financially? 15,000 won't last long in Chicago. Do you have family? Friends?" Naomi thought about the phone calls she'd made over the past weeks. Her parents were dead. Her brother lived in California with his own family problems. Her friends, the ones she thought were her friends, had gone quiet after the divorce announcement. Some had even sided with Gerald, saying there had to be two sides to every story. As if her side involved anything other than loving someone who didn't deserve it. "I'll manage," Naomi said. "What will you do?" "I don't know yet." Naomi stood up, smoothing down her jeans. She'd worn jeans to a lawyer's office because she'd sold all her nice clothes last month to pay rent. "But I won't disappear. I won't make this easy for him." Beverly stood as well, extending her hand. "For what it's worth, I think you're going to be okay. You're stronger than you know." Naomi shook her hand and walked out of the office. The Chicago wind hit her face as she stepped onto the street. October air, cold and sharp. She pulled her thin jacket tighter and started walking. Her car, the one Gerald was so generously letting her keep, was parked 3 blocks away. She'd parked far to save on parking fees. As she walked, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Naomi, this is Veronica. I think we should talk." Woman to woman. Naomi stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. People flowed around her like water around a stone. Woman to woman. What could that woman possibly have to say to her? "Thank you for saving my future husband's life? Sorry I stole your world?" She deleted the message without responding and kept walking. When she reached her car, a beat-up Honda that had seen better days, she sat in the driver's seat and stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror. She looked older than her 38 years. Her dark brown skin had lost its glow. Her eyes, once bright and full of dreams, looked tired. Her natural hair, usually styled in beautiful twists, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. "Who are you now?" she whispered to her reflection. The woman staring back didn't answer. But somewhere deep in Naomi's chest, something stirred. Not hope exactly. Not yet. But something harder. Something that tasted like anger mixed with determination. She started the car and drove toward her new apartment, a studio in a neighborhood she would never have considered before. As she drove, she thought about Gerald lying in that hospital bed 3 months ago, holding her hand, telling her she was his angel. She thought about signing the papers to sell Roots and Flavor, her grandmother's recipes, her loyal staff, her regular customers who came every Sunday after church. She thought about Veronica, who probably never cooked a meal in her life, who bought love with her bank account. And she thought about revenge. Not the hot, immediate kind. Not screaming or breaking things or making scenes. No, Naomi was a chef. She knew that the best dishes took time. Patience. The right ingredients added at the right moment. She knew how to create something unforgettable. By the time she pulled into her apartment parking lot, a plan was beginning to form. It was vague, just an outline really. But it was there. Gerald Thompson thought he'd gotten away with everything. He thought he'd traded up, moved on to a better life with a better woman. He had no idea what was coming. 3 months earlier, Naomi had stood in the kitchen of Roots and Flavor at 5 in the morning, prepping vegetables for the lunch rush. The restaurant wouldn't open for hours, but this was her favorite time. The quiet morning, the smell of fresh ingredients, the promise of feeding people who would leave satisfied and happy. Morning boss. Her sous chef, Tony, came through the back door carrying boxes of fresh herbs from the market. You're here early. Even for you. Couldn't sleep. Naomi smiled, chopping bell peppers with practiced precision. Big day. Food critic from the Tribune is coming for lunch. We'll kill it. Tony started unpacking herbs. Your grandmother's gumbo recipe never fails. Roots and Flavor had been open for 10 years. Naomi had started it with money from her own savings, a small business loan, and pure determination. She'd grown up watching her grandmother cook, learning recipes that had been passed down through generations. Soul food wasn't just cuisine to Naomi. It was history, culture, love made edible. The restaurant sat in a neighborhood that had been changing. Young professionals moving in, old families moving out. Naomi had kept her prices reasonable, refusing to become another gentrification story. Her regulars were everyone from construction workers to lawyers. She built something real. Her phone rang. Gerald's name flashed on the screen. Hey honey, she answered, wedging the phone between her ear and shoulder while she continued chopping. Naomi. His voice sounded strained. Something's wrong. My chest. I can't breathe right. The knife clattered onto the cutting board. What? Where are you? Home. I called 911. They're coming. But Naomi, I'm scared. I'm coming right now. Hold on. She was already pulling off her apron, yelling for Tony. Emergency. Family emergency. She drove like her own life depended on it, making it home in 15 minutes instead of the usual 30. The ambulance was already there, lights flashing. Paramedics were loading Gerald onto a stretcher. He looked gray, his brown skin ashen with pain. I'm his wife. Naomi shouted, running up. Ma'am, we need to go now. Meet us at Chicago General. She watched them speed away, then jumped back in her car. Her hands shook on the steering wheel. Gerald was only 42. He was healthy. He went to the gym. How could this be happening? At the hospital, the waiting room became her second home. Hours turned into days. The diagnosis came back. Serious heart condition requiring immediate surgery. Without it, he had months at most. With it, he could live a normal life. The surgery costs $400,000, the doctor explained, looking exhausted himself. Insurance will cover 60%. You'll need to come up with the rest. How much is the rest? Naomi asked, though she already knew the math. $160,000. Plus post-op care and medications. Call it $200,000 to be safe. Naomi sat in the hospital cafeteria at 2 in the morning, drinking terrible coffee and doing math on napkins. She had maybe $30,000 in savings. Gerald's job as a sales manager at a furniture company provided insurance but not much savings. Their house had a mortgage. Their cars were leased. But Roots and Flavor. The restaurant was worth money. Real money. She called her accountant at 7 in the morning. I need to know what Roots and Flavor is worth. What could I sell it for quickly? Naomi, are you serious? That's your baby. Just tell me. Given the location, the equipment, the established customer base, the reputation, you could get $400,000. Maybe more if you waited for the right buyer. I need it in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Naomi, that's. I know what I'm asking. Can you do it? Her accountant sighed. I'll make calls. Naomi went back to Gerald's room. He was awake, staring at the ceiling. When he saw her, his eyes filled with tears. I heard the doctor. 400,000. We don't have that, Naomi. I'm going to die. She sat on the edge of his bed and took his hand. His palm felt clammy, weak. No, you're not. I'm selling the restaurant. What? No. That's your dream. You're my life. Dreams can be rebuilt. I can't rebuild you. She squeezed his hand. We're going to get through this. Together. He pulled her close, holding her tight. I love you so much. You're my angel. My everything. I don't deserve you. Shoo, save your strength. The sale happened fast. A developer had been eyeing the property, wanting to turn it into some fusion place. Naomi signed the papers in the hospital cafeteria, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and recycled air. $400,000. 10 years of her life. Her grandmother's legacy. Tony cried when she told the staff. Boss, no. Let us fundraise. Let us. There's no time. Take care of yourselves. You're all talented. You'll land on your feet. The surgery happened on a Tuesday. Naomi sat in the waiting room for 6 hours, praying to a God she wasn't sure was listening. When the doctor came out smiling, saying it went perfectly, she collapsed in relief. Gerald recovered slowly. She took leave from the restaurant, which wasn't hers anymore, to care for him. She brought him soup, medicine, clean clothes. She read to him, played his favorite music, helped him walk when he was strong enough. I'm going to make this up to you, he said one evening 2 weeks after the surgery. Everything you sacrificed. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making you happy. You being alive makes me happy, she said, meaning every word. Her phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it. A message from her old restaurant manager. Miss you, boss. New owners changed everything. It doesn't feel like roots and flavor anymore. Naomi felt a pang of loss but pushed it away. Gerald was alive. That was what mattered. If only she'd known that in 2 weeks, everything would shatter. If only she'd known that the man holding her hand, promising forever, was already planning his exit. If only she'd known that sacrifice doesn't always equal love. The text message preview on Gerald's phone screen read, "Can't wait until you're well enough to leave her. I love you, baby." Naomi stood frozen in the bedroom doorway, holding a tray with homemade chicken soup and crackers. The phone sat on Gerald's bedside table, screen glowing in the dim afternoon light. Gerald was asleep or pretending to be. She'd just seen his eyes close quickly when she entered. Her hands didn't shake as she set the tray down. They should have. But shock does strange things to the body. She picked up the phone, unlocked it with the code she'd always known, and started reading. Messages going back 14 months. 14 months. Before the surgery. Before the restaurant sale. Before everything. Missing you tonight. When can we meet? I looked at wedding venues today. Can't wait to marry you. The surgery will work out. Then we can finally be together. Naomi scrolled and scrolled. Photos. Videos. Plans for a future that didn't include her. Veronica Sterling's face smiled from dozens of photos. Beautiful, polished, dripping with wealth. Her clothes probably cost more than Naomi's car. I know you're awake, Naomi said quietly. I can see you breathing differently. Gerald's eyes opened. For a moment, just a moment, she saw guilt. Then it was gone, replaced by something colder. Naomi. How long? She held up the phone. Actually, never mind. 14 months. I can see exactly how long. He sat up slowly, his hand going to his chest out of habit. The surgery scar was still pink and fresh. I was going to tell you. When? At our 20th anniversary? Our 30th? She laughed, surprised she could still make that sound. Or were you just going to disappear one day? Leave a note on the pillow? I was waiting until I recovered. I didn't want you to have to care for me and deal with a divorce at the same time. How thoughtful. How considerate. Naomi sat in the chair across from the bed, still holding his phone. Tell me something, Gerald. When I sold my restaurant to save your life, were you already planning to leave me for her? His silence answered everything. Oh my God. She pressed her hand to her mouth. You let me sell everything. You let me give up my dream. You held my hand and called me your angel. And you were already gone. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain it to me. Make it make sense. Gerald ran his hand over his face. Veronica and I met at a conference 18 months ago. She's successful, Naomi. She builds things. Empires. She saw potential in me that I didn't? Naomi's voice rose. I supported you for 15 years. Every job change, every failure, every dream you had. I worked 18-hour days at the restaurant while you figured out your career. I never once made you feel small. She has money, Naomi. Real money. She can give me opportunities, a life. We can travel, invest, build something together. He looked at her and his eyes were pleading. You have to understand. The surgery made me realize life is short. I want more than we have. We don't have anything anymore. I sold it to keep you alive. And I'm grateful. But gratitude isn't love. I haven't been in love with you for a long time. The words hit like a punch. Naomi stood up, her legs somehow still working. How long? What? How long have you not loved me? He looked away. 3 years. Maybe 4. 4 years. She thought about every meal she'd cooked him, every morning she'd kissed him goodbye, every night she'd fallen asleep next to him. All of it a lie. All of it him going through the motions while his heart was somewhere else. The surgery, she said slowly, pieces clicking together. You could have died. That's why you started this thing with Veronica, isn't it? Some kind of life crisis. Fear of dying. Maybe at first. But it became real. She's who I want to be with. Get out. What? Get out of this house. Now. Naomi's voice was steady. Too steady. Like she'd gone past emotion into something else entirely. I don't care that you just had surgery. I don't care that the doctor said you need rest. Get out of my sight. Naomi, be reasonable. Where am I supposed to go? To Veronica. She has money, right? She can put you up in a hotel. She can take care of you now. Naomi walked to the closet and started pulling out his clothes, throwing them on the bed. You have 1 hour to pack and leave. This is my house too. The house I paid the mortgage on while you bounced from job to job? She spun to face him. The house I kept us in while you figured out your life? You want to argue ownership? Fine. We'll let lawyers sort it out. But tonight you leave. Gerald stared at her like he'd never seen her before. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe she'd never let him see this version of her. The one who didn't bend. The one who didn't accommodate. The one who wouldn't be used. I'll call my lawyer, he said, reaching for his phone. It's in my hand. She looked at it, then at him. 14 months of messages. Planning your future while I cooked your meals. You want this phone, Gerald? He paled. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. But watching you pack seems like a good start. He got out of bed slowly, moving like an old man. The surgery had weakened him. Part of Naomi, the part that had loved him for 15 years, wanted to help him. Wanted to make sure he was okay. But that part was dying. Being murdered by every text message she'd read, every lie she'd uncovered. Gerald packed in silence. When his suitcases were full, he stood at the bedroom door. I never meant to hurt you like this. But you did it anyway. That's what makes it worse. You knew it would destroy me and you did it anyway. She met his eyes. The surgery gave you a second chance at life. I gave you that second chance. And this is what you do with it. Someday you'll understand. Get out. He left. She heard his car start in the driveway, heard him drive away. Then she sat on the bed surrounded by empty hangers and the ghost of a marriage that had died long before she realized it was sick. She still held his phone. After a moment, she opened it again and found Veronica's number. Her finger hovered over the call button. No, not yet. She wasn't ready to hear that woman's voice. Wasn't ready to give her the satisfaction. Naomi lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. She'd sold her restaurant for this man. She'd given up everything. And he'd been planning to leave her all along. The betrayal was so complete, so total that she couldn't even cry. She just lay there as the room grew dark, holding the phone that contained evidence of her husband's other life, and wondered who she was now. The divorce papers arrived exactly 1 week after Gerald moved out. Hand-delivered by a courier who looked apologetic as Naomi signed for them. She read them at her kitchen table, coffee growing cold beside her. Gerald wanted everything fast. He'd hired one of Chicago's most expensive divorce attorneys. The papers were thorough, brutal, efficient. He was claiming the restaurant sale was a joint marital decision to pay joint marital debt. Therefore, he wanted half of everything remaining. The house would be sold, assets split. He was offering her $15,000 and her car as a settlement. Naomi called 5 lawyers before she found one she could afford. Beverly Patterson worked out of a small office and agreed to payment plans. This is going to be hard, Beverly said after reviewing the papers. Legally, he has a case. The medical debt was incurred during the marriage. The restaurant sale paid it off. In the court's eyes, you both benefited. I sold my business to save his life. How is that benefiting equally? I know. But the law doesn't always account for emotion. We'll fight for a better settlement, but Naomi, you need to prepare yourself. You're not going to get what you deserve. The next 3 months were a blur of paperwork, court dates, and slow realization. Gerald's new lawyer was ruthless. They painted Naomi as equally responsible for the financial decisions. They brought up every argument she and Gerald had ever had, twisting them into a narrative of an unstable marriage. Veronica's money funded all of it. Her expensive attorneys versus Naomi's one overworked lawyer. He's living with her, Beverly reported after one court session. Penthouse downtown. They're not even trying to hide it. Are they engaged? Not officially. But yes, I'd say that's coming. Naomi sat in court and watched Gerald lie. Watched him claim they'd been unhappy for years. Watched him paint their marriage as something toxic that had needed to end. His lawyer referenced the restaurant sale as proof of financial mismanagement on both their parts. Mrs. Thompson made an emotional decision that depleted marital assets, Gerald's lawyer argued. My client is as much a victim of that choice as she is. Naomi had to be physically restrained by Beverly from responding. Don't, Beverly whispered. It'll only hurt your case. The judge, an older woman with steel-gray hair, looked unimpressed by both sides. When she issued her ruling, it was clinical and cold. The house would be sold. Assets divided. Gerald would keep his pension and retirement accounts. Naomi would get $15,000, her car, and half the proceeds from the house sale, which after the mortgage and fees, amounted to another $20,000. $35,000 total. For 15 years of marriage. For a restaurant she'd built from nothing. For a man whose life she'd saved. I'm sorry, Beverly said afterward. We can appeal, but don't. I can't afford to keep fighting. Naomi signed the final papers with a hand that had learned not to shake anymore. It's done. She moved out of the house on a cold November day. Friends who had promised to help suddenly had conflicts. People she'd known for years stopped returning her calls. Gerald's version of events had spread through their social circle. She was the bitter ex-wife. He was the man who'd finally escaped an unhappy marriage. Nobody wants to hear the truth, her brother told her during one of their rare phone calls. They want the simple story. You're getting screwed, sis. Everyone knows it. But Gerald and his new woman have money and connections. You're an easier target to ignore. Naomi moved into a studio apartment in a neighborhood where she parked her car on the street and heard sirens at night. The apartment was small, dark, and smelled like the previous tenant's cigarettes. But it was hers. Or rather, it was what she could afford on what was left of her settlement after Beverly's fees. She applied for jobs. Her resume looked good on paper. Restaurant owner, successful small business, excellent references. But word had spread. The woman who'd lost everything in a divorce. The desperate one. The risky hire. We're going in a different direction, they all said. She finally got hired at a corporate cafeteria. Serving pre-made food to office workers who didn't look at her face. The pay was minimum wage. The hours were long. Her feet hurt, her back ached, and every day she served food that would have made her grandmother cry. But she showed up. Every single day. On time. Did her job. Smiled at customers. At night she researched. She'd kept Gerald's phone, the one with all those messages. She'd backed it up, saved everything. And she started learning about Veronica Sterling. Real estate developer. 43 years old. Built her company from family money. Sterling Properties owned half the new development in Chicago's South Loop. She was on charity boards, social pages, business magazines. Naomi dug deeper. Public records. Court filings. Business registrations. She spent hours in the library using the free internet, reading everything she could find. And she found things. Little things at first. Code violations that mysteriously disappeared. Building permits that got approved suspiciously fast. City council members who voted in Veronica's favor and then got campaign donations. Nothing concrete. But patterns. Threads. The faint outline of something that didn't smell right. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Naomi was working a double shift when she saw them. Gerald and Veronica. They came into the building where she worked, heading to some business lunch upstairs. They didn't see her behind the cafeteria counter. Why would they? She was invisible in her hairnet and uniform. Gerald looked good. Healthy. Happy. He wore an expensive suit. Laughed at something Veronica said. She touched his arm like he belonged to her. Because he did. Naomi had been traded in for the upgraded model. She watched them disappear into the elevator and felt something crystallize inside her. Not sadness anymore. Not even anger. Something colder. Clear. She finished her shift, went home to her studio apartment, and opened her laptop. She'd been documenting everything about Veronica's business dealings for months. Now she had a purpose for all that information. If they thought she would just disappear, just fade into being another discarded wife, they were wrong. Naomi had learned a long time ago that revenge was a dish best served cold. She'd learned that good cooking required patience, timing, and the right ingredients coming together at exactly the right moment. She was ready to start cooking. The food blog started as therapy. Naomi needed something to fill the empty hours in her studio apartment, something to remind herself that she was still the woman who'd built roots and flavor from nothing. She called it Second Helpings, and wrote her first post at midnight after a particularly brutal shift at the cafeteria. My grandmother used to say that food is love made visible. She taught me that cooking isn't just about following recipes. It's about putting your heart on a plate and hoping someone understands what you're saying without words. I lost my restaurant 6 months ago. I lost a lot of things, but I didn't lose the love. This blog is about finding it again. She posted recipes from memory. Her grandmother's gumbo, Sunday fried chicken, peach cobbler that made people weep. She wrote about the stories behind each dish, the history, the culture, the love. At first nobody read it, just her posting into the void. But slowly people found it. A share here, a comment there. Someone tried her cornbread recipe and posted a photo. Someone else asked about the history of Juneteenth foods. 3 months after starting the blog, she had 1,000 followers. 6 months in, she had 10,000. People loved the combination of recipes, storytelling, and history. Food bloggers started linking to her posts. A few small magazines asked to reprint her articles. "You're really good at this," one of her cafeteria co-workers said, reading the blog during their break. "Why are you working here?" "Because websites don't pay rent," Naomi said. But the question stuck with her. The blog started getting sponsorship offers. Small ones. A spice company wanting her to use their products. A cookware brand offering free equipment. Nothing major, but enough that she could see a path forward. Meanwhile, her research into Veronica and Gerald continued. She'd created folders on her laptop. Public records. News articles. Building permits. Financial disclosures. She tracked every property Veronica developed, every city council vote that went her way, every curious coincidence. She found a pattern with building inspector number 4447. Every property Veronica wanted approved got assigned to this inspector. Every single one passed with flying colors. Even properties that later had structural issues. She found city council member Patrick Hughes, who'd voted yes on every single Sterling Properties proposal. His campaign finance records showed donations from a shell company that traced back to Veronica. She found loan documents for Veronica's company. Gerald's signature appeared on several of them, dated from the past 4 months. He was now officially vice president of Sterling Properties. A man who'd been a furniture salesman 6 months ago was suddenly a real estate executive. Nepotism. Fraud. Bribery. Nothing she could prove in court. But patterns. Threads. The skeleton of something corrupt. One evening, Naomi was writing a blog post about her grandmother's red beans and rice when she got an email from an address she didn't recognize. "Hi Naomi, my name is Jordan Chin. I'm an investigative journalist with Chicago Voice, an online news outlet. I've been reading your blog and I'm fascinated by your story. Would you be interested in talking? I'd love to do a feature on you and Second Helpings." Naomi stared at the email. Jordan Chin. She looked up the name. Real journalist. Credentials checked out. Chicago Voice was small but respected, known for investigative pieces on city corruption. She wrote back, "Thank you for your interest. I'd be happy to talk. When works for you." They met at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park. Jordan turned out to be younger than Naomi expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes and a notebook that never left their hand. "Your blog is amazing," Jordan said after they ordered. "The way you weave personal history with food history is really something. But I have to admit, when I started researching you for the feature, I found something interesting." Naomi's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. "What?" "Your divorce from Gerald Thompson. His marriage to Veronica Sterling. Your restaurant sale. The timeline." Jordan pulled out their notebook. "I don't mean to pry into your personal life, but as a journalist I noticed some things. The timing of everything. How fast their relationship moved. His sudden job at her company. Why would that interest you?" "Because I've been investigating Veronica Sterling's business practices for 8 months. There's something wrong there. Corruption probably. Fraud definitely. but I can't prove it yet. And then I found your story and I thought maybe you'd be interested in helping me. Naomi set her cup down carefully. What makes you think I'd help you? Because you've been researching her too. I can tell. Your blog posts sometimes mention real estate development in Chicago, gentrification, how neighborhoods change. You're paying attention. And you have reason to. Jordan leaned forward. Look, I'm not asking you to do anything illegal or dangerous. But if you found anything, documents, patterns, anything that doesn't add up, I'd like to see it. I'm trying to write a story that matters. About corruption at the city level. Veronica Sterling is part of that story. Naomi studied Jordan's face. They seemed sincere. But trusting people hadn't worked out well for her lately. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. Not automatically. But you can check my work. I've written about police corruption, housing discrimination, city council bribery. My stories are solid. I don't burn sources and I don't publish until I can back up every claim. Jordan pulled out a business card. Think about it. If you decide you want to talk, call me. If not, I'll still write the feature about your blog and we never have to discuss this again. Naomi took the card. Jordan paid for the coffee and left. Naomi sat there for another hour, thinking. She'd been collecting information for months, not sure what she'd do with it. This was a door opening. A chance to turn all her research into something real. Something that would hurt Gerald and Veronica the way they'd hurt her. But it was also dangerous. If she went after them and failed, she'd look like a bitter ex-wife trying to destroy her former husband's new life. The story would fit too perfectly into the narrative Gerald had already spread. She went home and opened all her folders. Looked at everything she'd collected. Thought about her grandmother, who used to say that truth has a way of rising to the surface like cream in milk. You can't keep it down forever. At 2 a.m, Naomi sent an email to Jordan. I have information you might find interesting. When can we meet? The response came back in 5 minutes. Tomorrow. My office. Come prepared to talk. Naomi closed her laptop and looked around her studio apartment. The space that represented everything she'd lost. The life she'd been reduced to. She thought about Gerald in his penthouse, sleeping next to the woman he'd chosen over her. Living off money that came from places that maybe weren't clean. Succeeding while she struggled. Not anymore. The blog had shown her that she could rebuild. That she had value beyond being someone's wife. The research had shown her that Gerald and Veronica weren't untouchable. And Jordan had given her the weapon she needed. Naomi had spent months surviving. Now it was time to start fighting. Jordan's office was a converted loft in Pilsen, filled with computers, whiteboards covered in notes, and stacks of documents that made Naomi feel at home. This was someone who understood research. Who understood patterns. Coffee? Jordan offered, already pouring from a pot that looked like it had been brewing since dawn. Yes, please. Naomi sat at the conference table and pulled out her laptop. Before I show you anything, I need your word. This doesn't blow back on me until we're ready. I can't lose the little I have left. You have my word. In journalism, protecting sources is sacred. I've been threatened, sued, and arrested. Never once gave up a source. Jordan sat across from her. Show me what you've got. Naomi opened her folders. 6 months of documentation. Building permits. City council votes. Campaign donations. Financial records. Shell companies. Gerald's signatures on documents he probably didn't understand. Jordan's eyes widened as they scrolled through it all. This is good. Really good. Where did you learn to research like this? Public library. Free internet. Time. Naomi pulled up a spreadsheet she'd made. Look at this. Every property Sterling Properties has developed in the past 3 years. Now look at the building inspectors assigned. Same guy, inspector number 4447 on almost all of them. That's not random. No, it's not. Jordan was already taking notes. Do you know his name? Robert Castellano. He's been with the city for 20 years. Lives in a house way too nice for his salary. His daughter goes to private school that costs $40,000 a year. Jordan looked up. How do you know all this? Property records are public. So are school registrations if you know where to look. Social media tells you a lot if people don't lock down their privacy. Naomi pulled up another file. And this is Patrick Hughes, City Council member for District 7. He's voted yes on every single Sterling Properties proposal. Every one. Even the controversial ones. His campaign donations show money from something called Lakeside Consulting LLC. Let me guess. Shell Company? Traces back to Veronica Sterling. It took me weeks to follow the money, but it's there. Jordan sat back, coffee forgotten. This is a corruption story. Bigger than I thought. Sterling isn't just a developer. She's buying influence. And Gerald is right in the middle of it. Naomi pulled up loan documents. These are from Sterling Properties business loans. Gerald signed as vice president. He's legally liable for anything fraudulent in these deals. Does he know what he signed? I don't know. I don't care. He wanted the good life with her. Now he's connected to everything she does. Jordan studied Naomi's face. This is about more than just exposing corruption for you. Of course it is. I want them to pay for what they did to me. But I also want the truth out there. Veronica Sterling acts like she's a pillar of the community. Charity galas and magazine covers. She's corrupt. Gerald helped her. They should face consequences. They will. But I need more. I need sources who'll go on record. I need documents I can verify independently. What you've given me is a map. Now I need to follow the roads. Jordan pulled out their phone. Give me 2 weeks. I'll dig into everything you've shown me. I'll talk to people. If this is as big as I think it is, we'll break the story. But it has to be airtight. No room for lawsuits or claims of false reporting. Naomi nodded. She'd waited this long. 2 more weeks wouldn't kill her. Over the next 14 days, she threw herself into her blog. The feature Jordan had written about second helpings went live, and suddenly Naomi had 50,000 followers. Sponsors started reaching out. A meal kit company offered her a partnership deal. A publisher emailed about a possible cookbook. You're blowing up, her cafeteria manager said, reading the article during lunch break. When are you quitting this place? Soon, Naomi said. Very soon. She gave her notice the next day. Started a catering company out of her studio apartment. Nothing fancy. Small events, dinner parties, meal prep services. But it was cooking. Real cooking. Her grandmother's recipes brought back to life. The first event was a birthday party for 20 people. She made fried catfish, collard greens, mac and cheese, and peach cobbler. The host posted photos on social media, tagging second helpings. The responses were immediate. Where can I book you? Do you do weddings? How much for a private dinner? Within a month, Naomi was booked solid. She had to turn down events. The money wasn't huge yet, but it was more than the cafeteria paid. It was hope made tangible. Jordan called on day 15. Can you meet me? Tonight? This is urgent. They met at the same coffee shop. Jordan looked tired but excited. They spread documents across the table between them. I found 3 people willing to go on record. A former Sterling Properties employee who handled the books. A city inspector who was told to look the other way. A contractor who was asked to hide code violations. Combined with your research, I have enough for the story. Naomi's heart started racing. When does it publish? Next week. Chicago Voice is running it as a 3-part series. The Sterling Standard, How One Developer Bought Chicago. We're dropping it on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Maximum impact. Maximum coverage. Will they come after you? Probably. Let them try. I've got editors who back me up and lawyers who love this kind of fight. Jordan leaned forward. Naomi, this is going to be big. Veronica Sterling will face investigation. Gerald's name is all over these documents. He's going to be dragged into this whether he likes it or not. Good. You understand this might get messy? They might try to claim you're a bitter ex-wife orchestrating a revenge plot. Let them try. Everything you're publishing is true. I didn't make Gerald sign those documents. I didn't make Veronica bribe city officials. I just connected the dots. Jordan nodded slowly. Okay. But when this breaks, you need to be ready. Gerald will know the timing is suspicious. He'll probably try to contact you. I'll handle it. And Veronica has money for lawyers. Lots of them. I know. But truth is truth. She can't lawyer her way out of facts. They parted ways. Naomi walked home through Chicago streets that were starting to feel less hostile. Her phone was full of catering requests. Her blog had partnerships lined up. Her bank account wasn't empty anymore. She thought about Gerald and Veronica in their penthouse. How comfortable they must feel. How secure in their new life together. His health restored. Her money providing everything he'd wanted. They had no idea what was coming. The story would drop in 7 days. 1 week. Enough time for Naomi to prepare. To make sure her business was protected, her finances separated, her connection to Jordan completely hidden. She'd learned the hard way that love could be betrayed. That sacrifice could be ignored. That good people could lose while bad people won. But she'd also learned something else. She was stronger than she thought. Smarter than anyone gave her credit for. and patient enough to wait for the perfect moment to strike. 7 days. Then everything would change. Naomi spent the week before the story dropped preparing her life for the storm. She moved her blog to a private server, set up a business entity for her catering company, opened a separate bank account, created social media accounts that focused only on food, nothing personal. She also did something she'd been putting off for months. She went back to her old neighborhood, to the building that used to house Roots and Flavor. The new restaurant was called Fusion Forward. Naomi stood across the street, looking at the minimalist sign, the floor-to-ceiling windows showing sleek metal tables and Edison bulbs. A menu board advertised deconstructed soul food. $28 for what they called elevated mac and cheese. Nothing about it felt like home. Nothing about it felt like love. But seeing it didn't hurt as much as she expected. Maybe because she'd built something new. Or maybe because she finally understood that Roots and Flavor wasn't the building. It was her. Her recipes. Her knowledge. Her heart. They could take the location, but they couldn't take what made it special. She walked away feeling lighter. Jordan called on Sunday night. Story goes live at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Be ready for your phone to blow up. I mentioned your blog in the article as an example of real community food culture versus Veronica's gentrification projects. You're going to get attention. Will they connect me to you? Not from the article. I protected your identity as a source. Officially, everything came from the 3 people who went on record in my own investigation. You're just a food blogger I quoted. Thank you. Don't thank me. This is justice. I'm just the messenger. Jordan paused. Are you scared? Terrified. But I'm doing it anyway. That's courage. Real courage. Not the absence of fear, but doing what's right despite it. Naomi barely slept that night. She kept checking the time. 5 a.m. 5:30. 5:45. At exactly 6 a.m. her phone started buzzing. Text messages. Emails. Social media notifications. All of them talking about the Chicago Voice article. She opened it on her laptop. The headline was stark. The Sterling Standard, How Developer Veronica Sterling Built an Empire on Bribes and Fraud. The article was thorough and damning. Jordan had documented everything. The bribes. The shell companies. The falsified inspections. The city officials in Veronica's pocket. And right there in the middle of it all, Gerald Thompson, vice president of Sterling Properties, whose signature appeared on multiple documents connected to the fraud. The article didn't accuse Gerald directly, but it raised questions. How much did he know? Was he complicit or just careless? Either way, he was legally liable. Part 2 would drop Wednesday, promising to reveal more about specific properties and the money trail. Part 3 Friday would detail the human cost. Families displaced, neighborhoods destroyed, communities broken. By 8 a.m., every news outlet in Chicago had picked up the story. Veronica Sterling was being called for comment. So was Gerald. City officials were scrambling to distance themselves. The mayor promised investigations. Naomi's blog traffic exploded. Thousands of new followers. Messages asking for her story. Requests for interviews. She ignored most of it. Let the focus stay on Jordan's reporting. But then her phone rang with a number she'd blocked months ago. Gerald. She stared at it, her finger hovering over the answer button. Finally she picked up. Naomi. His voice was panicked. Did you do this? Did you give them this information? I don't know what you're talking about. The Chicago Voice story. About Veronica's business. My name is all over it. This is going to destroy everything. Everything? You mean the life you built on fraud? The relationship you started while lying to me? That everything? I didn't know about the bribes. I just signed what Veronica told me to sign. I trusted her. How does that feel? Trusting someone who's using you? Naomi's voice was cold. Familiar? Don't do this. Don't act like this is justice. You're just trying to hurt me. No, Gerald. I'm just existing. Living my life. If your choices are catching up to you, that's not my fault. That's consequences. If they investigate, I could go to jail. Do you understand that? I understand that you signed documents that were fraudulent. I understand that you took a job you weren't qualified for because your girlfriend has money. I understand that you made choices. Now you get to live with them. I need your help. Naomi laughed. Actually laughed. Help? You want my help? Please. If they ask you questions, just say you don't know anything. Say we didn't talk about business. Say lies? Cover for you? Again? She stood up, pacing her small apartment. I sold my restaurant to save your life. You thanked me by having an affair and leaving me with nothing. Now you're asking me to lie to protect you? No. Naomi. I'm done, Gerald. Done being your safety net. Done being the person you use and throw away. You wanted a new life? Congratulations. This is it. She hung up. Her hands shook, but her heart felt clear. Strong. The phone rang again immediately. Veronica this time. Naomi answered. We need to talk. Veronica's voice was controlled, calm, deadly. Woman to woman. I don't think we have anything to talk about. You gave that journalist information about my business. Don't bother denying it. Gerald told me about his phone, the one you kept. You've been planning this. I didn't have to plan anything. You built your empire on corruption. I just helped connect the dots. This will ruin me. My company. Everything I've built. You built it on lies. On displaced families and bribed officials. Maybe it should fall. And Gerald? He could go to prison. You're willing to do that to him? I'm not doing anything to him. He signed those documents. He took that job. He made his choices. You vindictive. Careful. I have excellent lawyers now. My catering business is doing well. My blog has 500,000 followers. I've rebuilt from nothing. If you come after me, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you are. Silence on the line. Then, this isn't over. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. Naomi hung up and blocked the number. Her phone kept buzzing with calls, but she ignored them. Let Gerald and Veronica panic. Let them scramble. Let them feel what it was like to have your world pulled out from under you. She opened her laptop and started working on her next blog post. A recipe for her grandmother's sweet potato pie. The post wouldn't mention Gerald or Veronica or revenge. It would just be about food and love and how sometimes you have to lose everything to remember who you really are. Her followers would read it and see a woman who'd survived. Who'd rebuilt. Who'd found herself again. Gerald and Veronica would read it and see something else. A declaration. A statement that said, you didn't break me. You freed me. The story was just beginning to unfold. Wednesday's article would dig deeper. Fridays would finish them off. But Naomi was already done. Already moving forward. Already living proof that revenge didn't have to be loud or violent. Sometimes it was just truth. Truth and time, and watching everything built on lies come crashing down. Wednesday's article hit even harder than Monday's. Jordan had traced every dollar, every bribe, every backdoor deal. The shell companies had names now. The payments had amounts. The city officials caught with their hands in Veronica's pocket were named and quoted. Gerald's role expanded. Emails were published showing he'd been present at meetings where bribery was discussed. He'd signed off on budgets that included consulting fees that went to officials' family members. Either he was criminally complicit or criminally negligent. Neither looked good. The city of Chicago announced formal investigations. Federal authorities got involved. Sterling Properties offices were raided, boxes of documents seized. Veronica's assets were frozen pending investigation. Naomi watched it all unfold from her apartment while preparing food for a catering event. 50 people. Corporate lunch. They'd hired her based on her blog. Paid her $3,000. Her phone buzzed constantly with interview requests. Good Morning Chicago wanted her on their show. Several podcasts reached out. A literary agent called about that cookbook deal. She said no to the interviews, yes to the agent. I want to tell my grandmother's story through food, she told the agent over the phone. Not my divorce. Not revenge. Just recipes and history and love. Can we do that? Absolutely. Your platform is strong enough now. Publishers will be interested. That evening, Naomi was testing a new cornbread recipe when someone knocked on her door. Loud, aggressive knocking. She looked through the peephole. Gerald. You look terrible. Unshaven, disheveled, desperate. Naomi, I know you're in there. Please, just talk to me. She opened the door but kept the chain lock on. What? I need your help. Veronica's lawyers told her to cut ties with me. She broke up with me this morning. Said I'm a liability. I have nowhere to go. No money. My bank accounts are frozen because of the investigation. That's not my problem. Please. You're the only person I have left. Naomi studied his face through the gap in the door. This was the man she'd loved for 15 years. The man she'd sacrificed everything for. The man who'd destroyed her without hesitation. And now he was here begging. She felt something she didn't expect. Not satisfaction. Not joy. Just a quiet kind of peace. Like closing a book you finished reading. You have nobody left because of your choices, Gerald. You left me when I had nothing. You took everything I built and used it to save yourself, then threw me away for someone richer. Now she's doing the same to you. That's not irony. That's consequences. I'm sorry. I know I hurt you. I was wrong about everything. I should never have left you. You're not sorry you hurt me. You're sorry you're caught. You're sorry your new life fell apart. That's not the same thing. What do you want me to do? Beck? I'm begging. Please, just let me stay here for a few days. Until I figure things out. No. Naomi. You made your choices. You picked money over love. Success over loyalty. A woman who could give you things over a woman who gave you everything. Now you get to live with that. It's not my job to save you anymore. I could go to prison. Then you'll go to prison. That's between you and the law. I didn't make you sign those documents. You gave them that information. You planned this whole thing. I gave a journalist publicly available information. You committed fraud. Those are different things. You wanted revenge. You got it. Are you happy now? Naomi thought about it. Was she happy? Not in the way Gerald meant. She wasn't dancing on his grave or celebrating his suffering. But she was free. She'd rebuilt a life. She had a business, a future, a sense of self that wasn't tied to being someone's wife. I'm content, she said. And that's more than you ever gave me the chance to be. What am I supposed to do? Figure it out. Like I had to. Get a job. Find a cheap apartment. Learn to live without someone taking care of you. It's not easy, but you'll survive. Or maybe you won't. Either way, it's not my concern anymore. She closed the door. Gerald stood outside for a long time. She could see his shadow under the door. Eventually he left. Naomi went back to her cornbread, testing the texture, adjusting the recipe. Her grandmother used to say that cooking was about patience. About knowing when something was ready and when it needed more time. Friday's article was the final blow. Jordan detailed the human cost of Sterling Properties developments. Families displaced without proper compensation. Historic buildings demolished despite neighborhood opposition. Communities destroyed while Veronica's bank account grew. One section mentioned roots and flavor. A beloved soul food restaurant in a transitional neighborhood, sold under financial pressure, replaced by an expensive fusion place that served the newcomers but ignored the longtime residents. A perfect example of gentrification dressed up as progress. Naomi read that section 3 times. Jordan had told her story without using her name. Let the neighborhood speak for itself. The comments section exploded. People who remembered roots and flavor. People who'd eaten her grandmother's recipes. People who said the neighborhood hadn't been the same since. Whoever owned that place, I hope they're okay. Best fried chicken in Chicago. Nothing's been the same since. This is why we can't have nice things. Rich people come in and destroy everything that makes a neighborhood special. Naomi closed her laptop and looked around her studio apartment. Small. Simple. Not much. But hers. Built by her effort. Her recipes. Her work. The doorbell rang again. She almost didn't answer, expecting Gerald. But it was a delivery. Flowers. Expensive ones. The card read, "You win. Congratulations. B." Naomi threw the flowers in the trash without taking them out of the box. She didn't want anything from Veronica Sterling. Not flowers. Not acknowledgement. Not even the satisfaction of being told she'd won. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about truth. It was about justice. It was about refusing to let corrupt people succeed at the expense of good people. The investigations would take months. Trials might take years. But the damage was done. Veronica's empire was crumbling. Gerald was facing criminal charges. Their relationship had imploded under pressure. And Naomi? She had a cookbook deal to negotiate and catering events to plan. She went back to her kitchen and started preparing tomorrow's meals. Her grandmother's recipes. Made with love. Made with integrity. Made by a woman who'd learned that the best revenge wasn't destruction. It was success. It was surviving. It was refusing to let anyone take away your ability to love what you do and do it well. 3 months after the story broke, the city charges came down. Veronica Sterling was indicted on 12 counts. Bribery, fraud, conspiracy, tax evasion. Gerald faced 7 counts as an accomplice and for signing fraudulent documents. Both were looking at serious prison time. The trials wouldn't start for another year at least, but the damage was immediate. Sterling Properties declared bankruptcy. Assets were seized. Properties sold at auction. Investors sued. Veronica's face, once featured in business magazines, now appeared in mugshots on the news. Gerald couldn't afford bail. He sat in county jail waiting for a trial date. His lawyer was public defender, overwhelmed and underpaid. Nobody was offering to help him. All the friends who'd celebrated his new life disappeared when the money dried up. Veronica made bail using what little assets hadn't been frozen. She tried to save her company, her reputation. But people talked. Business partners withdrew. Charity boards removed her. The society pages that had loved her now published think pieces about corruption and privilege. She called Naomi one last time from a number Naomi hadn't blocked. "I hope you're satisfied." Veronica's voice was stripped of its usual polish. She sounded tired, defeated. "You destroyed everything." "I didn't destroy anything. You built your empire on corruption. It was always going to fall. I just sped up the timeline. Gerald might go to prison for years. Because of you. Because of the documents he signed. The decisions he made. I didn't put the pen in his hand." "You wanted this. Revenge. You got it. Was it worth it?" Naomi thought about it. "I wanted justice. I got it. Those are different things." "What's the difference?" "Justice isn't about me. It's about all the people you hurt. The families you displaced. The neighborhoods you destroyed. The officials you corrupted. Gerald and I are just two people. You hurt hundreds. Justice is about all of them, not just me. I'm going to lose everything." "Yes, just like I did. Except I didn't have millions in offshore accounts to fall back on." Naomi paused. "You know what the worst part is, Veronica? You had everything. Money, success, power. You could have built something legitimate. Something good. But you chose corruption. You chose shortcuts. You didn't have to hurt people to succeed. You chose to. And Gerald? What about him? What about him? Do you still love him? After everything?" Naomi thought about the question. Did she love Gerald? The man she'd married? The man she'd sacrificed everything for? "I love who I thought he was. But that person never existed. So no, I don't love him. I don't hate him either. I just don't care. He's a stranger who once lived in my house. He tells anyone who'll listen that you set him up. That this is all your revenge plot. Let him. The documents are real. The signatures are his. If that's revenge, then what do you call what he did to me?" Veronica was silent for a long moment. "I didn't make him leave you. That was his choice. You made it easy. You dangled money and status and a better life. But you're right. He made the choice. Just like he chose to sign those documents without reading them. Just like he chose to take a job he wasn't qualified for. Gerald's biggest problem isn't me. It's that he never took responsibility for anything. What happens now? You write a cookbook and live happily ever after while we go to prison? I write a cookbook. I run my catering business. I live my life. What happens to you isn't my concern anymore. You're not part of my story. You're just a chapter that's over. I underestimated you. Most people do. They see a quiet woman who cooks and assume that's all there is. They forget that running a restaurant for 10 years takes intelligence, strength, and resilience. They forget that people who build things from nothing are dangerous when you take it away. Not because they're violent. Because they know how to build again. I won't forget. Good. Remember it in prison." Naomi hung up. That was the last time she spoke to either of them. Over the next months, she watched from a distance as their legal troubles deepened. Gerald's family tried to raise money for a better lawyer but came up short. His mother called Naomi once, pleading for help. Naomi told her no. Gently but firmly. "Your son made choices that hurt a lot of people, including me. I can't help him. I'm sorry." Veronica's trial date was set. Gerald's followed 2 months later. The city prosecutor was aggressive. Federal charges might follow. Legal experts predicted lengthy sentences. Naomi stopped following the news after a while. She had other things to focus on. Her cookbook deal was finalized. Second helpings, recipes and stories from my grandmother's kitchen. Publication date set for next fall. Advance payment enough to move into a better apartment. Not luxury, but comfortable. Safe. Bright. Her catering business expanded. She hired 2 assistants. Bought proper equipment. Rented commercial kitchen space. Booked events 6 months in advance. Changed the name from Second Helpings Catering to Roots Revival. A nod to her old restaurant. A promise of something new. Food critics started reviewing her events. Positive write-ups. Comparisons to the old roots in flavor but better, more refined, evolved. She'd taken what she'd learned and made it stronger. One evening, working late in her new commercial kitchen, Jordan stopped by with coffee and donuts. Thought you might need fuel. They set down the bag and sat on a stool. Big news. Veronica took a plea deal. 5 years minimum. Gerald's going to trial. His lawyer says he might get 7 to 10. Naomi kept chopping onions. Okay. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say? I don't know. I thought you'd be happy. This is what you wanted, right? Naomi set down her knife and looked at Jordan. I wanted them to face consequences. They are. I wanted the truth to come out. It did. I wanted justice for the people they hurt. The city is reviewing all their developments, compensating displaced families. Mission accomplished. I don't need to celebrate their suffering to feel good about that. You're a better person than me. I'd be throwing a party. No, you wouldn't. You're a journalist. You care about truth, not revenge. Same as me. We did the right thing. That's enough. Jordan smiled. The cookbook's going to be great. I read the advanced copy your publisher sent me. You did. Requested it. I wanted to see how the story ended. Jordan pulled out their phone and showed Naomi a photo. The dedication page. For my grandmother who taught me that love is the best ingredient. And for everyone who's had to start over. We're stronger than we know. That's beautiful. It's true. Naomi went back to chopping. You helped me get here. The article, the attention, the platform. Thank you. You helped yourself. I just wrote down what was already true. Jordan stood up. One more thing. I'm doing a follow-up piece. 6 months after the original story. What happened to everyone involved? Can I interview you? About the trial? About you. About Roots revival. About rebuilding. The human side. The success story. People need to know that sometimes the person who loses everything can still win in the end. Naomi thought about it, then nodded. Okay, but on my terms. We focus on the food, the business, the recipes. Not the revenge. Not Gerald. I'm done making my story about him. Deal. After Jordan left, Naomi finished prep work and locked up. Walked to her car in the Chicago night. Cold November air, same as the night she'd moved into her studio apartment. But everything else was different. She wasn't broken anymore. Wasn't lost. Wasn't defined by what someone had taken from her. She was Naomi. Entrepreneur. Cookbook author. Survivor. And Gerald and Veronica? They were just people who'd made terrible choices and were paying for them. Their fall wasn't her victory. It was just justice being served. She drove home to her new apartment thinking about tomorrow's events. A wedding. Corporate lunch. Private dinner party. Her calendar was full. Her bank account was healthy. Her heart was healing. Revenge, she'd learned, wasn't about watching others fall. It was about refusing to fall with them. It was about standing back up. Building again. Proving that you were more than what they'd tried to reduce you to. That was the best revenge of all. 1 year after the divorce, Naomi stood in front of a building in her old neighborhood. Not the location that used to house Roots and Flavor. That was gone, permanently transformed into something else. This was a different space. Bigger. Better. With huge windows and her new sign, Roots Revival, a soul food experience. Her second restaurant. Built from her own success. No loans from banks that would own her. No partners who could take it away. Just her recipes, her reputation, and her hard work. The grand opening was in 3 days. Her cookbook had been out for 2 months, climbing bestseller lists. Good Morning Chicago finally got their interview, focusing on her grandmother's recipes and the restaurant's opening. Forbes did a piece on her as an entrepreneur who'd rebuilt after losing everything. People connected with the story because it was real. Honest. Human. You sure about the location? Tony asked, helping her arrange tables. Her old sous chef had come back to work with her. Half her original staff had reached out when they heard about Roots Revival. This neighborhood has memories. Good memories. This is where I learned to cook. Where I built my first dream. Feels right to come back. She adjusted a table placement. Besides, the neighborhood needs real food. Not expensive fusion. Just good soul food at prices people can afford. The day before the opening, Naomi was doing final prep when her lawyer called. Gerald's sentencing hearing is tomorrow. Thought you'd want to know. What's he looking at? 7 years. He took a deal. Testimony against Veronica in exchange for reduced time. He'll be out in 5 with good behavior. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. Will you go? To the hearing? Naomi looked around her new restaurant. At everything she'd built. No. I have a restaurant opening. That's more important. She hung up and went back to work. That evening, sitting alone in her empty restaurant, testing recipes one final time, someone knocked on the door. She looked up to see a woman about her age. African American, dressed professionally, nervous smile. Naomi opened the door. We're not open yet. Grand opening is tomorrow. I know. I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Simone. I just wanted to meet you before the crowds came. The woman held out her hand. I used to eat at Roots and Flavor every Sunday with my family. Your restaurant was special to us. When I heard you were opening again, I had to tell you what it meant. Naomi shook her hand, surprised. Come in, please. They sat at the bar. Simone looked around, eyes shining. It feels like the old place. Different but the same. Like coming home. That's what I was going for. I read your cookbook. Tried your grandmother's gumbo recipe. Made me cry because it tasted like my own grandmother's. Like history. Like love. That's the best compliment you could give me. When you lost the first restaurant, a lot of us in the neighborhood were heartbroken. We knew the story. How you sold it to save your husband. How he left you anyway. People talked. We were angry for you. I didn't know that. You inspired us. Not by getting revenge. But by getting back up. By refusing to stay down. My daughter's in culinary school now because of you. She says if you can rebuild after losing everything, she can build something from nothing. Simone pulled out her phone and showed Naomi a photo. A young woman in chef's whites, smiling. That's her. Jasmine. She wants to work here someday. Tell her to apply. I'm hiring for the summer rush. They talked for another hour. About food, family, the neighborhood, dreams. When Simone left, she hugged Naomi tight. Thank you. For coming back. For not letting them win. After she left, Naomi sat alone in her restaurant and let herself feel everything. The pain of the past year. The anger at Gerald. The betrayal. But also the growth. The strength. The realization that she'd survived something that should have broken her. Opening day was chaos. Beautiful chaos. Lines around the block. Every table full. Orders backing up the kitchen. Naomi worked the line herself, calling orders, checking plates, making sure everything was perfect. She saw faces she recognized from the old Roots and Flavor. Families who'd been eating her food for years. New faces too. Young professionals, students, tourists who'd read about her in magazines. Everyone mixing together, enjoying the same food, sharing the same space. This was what she'd wanted. Community. Connection. Love made visible through food. At closing, after everyone left and her staff cleaned up, Tony came to find her. Boss, this was incredible. Better than the first time. Better because I'm better. I learned a lot in the past year. Gerald and Veronica? What about them? Gerald got 7 years today. Veronica's serving 5 already. Thought you'd want to know. I heard. I'm glad justice was served. But Tony, that's not my story anymore. They're not part of my life. They're just people I used to know who made bad choices. You're not angry? I was furious. But anger is heavy. I got tired of carrying it. So I put it down and picked up something lighter. Oh, purpose. My grandmother's recipes. She smiled. Turns out those are much better things to hold on to. Tony nodded. What's next? Franchise? More locations. Slow down. Let's make this one great first. Then we'll see. After everyone left, Naomi locked up and stood on the sidewalk looking at her restaurant. Her name on the sign. Her dream realized. Her grandmother's legacy continued. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the articles about your opening. I'm happy for you. Wish things had been different. Gee. Naomi stared at the message for a long moment. Gerald, texting from prison probably. Looking for what? Forgiveness? Connection? Some piece of the past? She deleted the message without responding. Not out of anger. Just out of finality. That chapter was closed. She had no interest in reopening it. A man walking past the restaurant stopped, reading the menu board. You open? Not tonight. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. What kind of food? Soul food. My grandmother's recipes. Real food made with love. He smiled. Love, huh? That's a good ingredient. The best one. He walked on. Naomi took one last look at her restaurant, then headed home. Not to the studio apartment. She'd moved into a small house with a real kitchen. Nothing fancy but hers. She'd even started a garden in the backyard. Growing herbs for the restaurant. That night she couldn't sleep. Not from anxiety but from energy. She went to her kitchen and started baking. Her grandmother's sweet potato pie. The recipe that had started Second Helping's blog. The dish that had reminded her who she was when everything else was taken away. As she worked, mixing ingredients with practiced ease, she thought about the past year. How she'd gone from broken to successful. From victim to survivor. From someone defined by loss to someone defined by resilience. Gerald and Veronica were in prison, their empire destroyed. But their punishment wasn't her victory. Their fall wasn't her rise. Those things weren't connected. Her victory was this pie cooling on her counter. Her restaurant full of happy customers. Her cookbook on bestseller lists. Her grandmother's recipes bringing joy to a new generation. Her ability to love what she did without bitterness poisoning it. That was success. That was revenge in its purest form. Not hurting them. Just proving that they couldn't hurt her permanently. That she was bigger than what they'd done to her. She cut a slice of pie, still warm, and tasted it. Perfect, she called Tony. Tomorrow we add sweet potato pie to the menu. My grandmother's recipe. At 2 a.m. you decided this? At 2 a.m. I remembered something. My grandmother used to say that the secret to good cooking isn't expensive ingredients. It's cooking with love. I forgot that for a while. Let bitterness in. But I'm done with that. Tomorrow we serve food made with nothing but love. You're a good person, boss. Better than most. I'm just a person who learned that the best way to fight darkness is to create light. Easier. More effective. More fun. She hung up and finished her pie. Sat at her kitchen table in her small house and felt content. Not happy in an ecstatic way. Just peaceful. Settled. Right. Gerald was in prison. Veronica was in prison. And Naomi? Naomi was free. Free to build. Free to love her work. Free to wake up every morning without carrying the weight of betrayal. Free to be herself without bending to fit someone else's expectations. She'd sold her restaurant to save a man who didn't deserve saving. She'd lost everything to someone who valued nothing. But in losing everything she'd found herself. And she'd rebuilt something better. Stronger. More authentically hers. That was the happy ending. Not revenge. Not watching them suffer. Just freedom. Just peace. Just a woman and her grandmother's recipes and a restaurant full of people who appreciated what love tastes like. The next morning, Roots Revival opened for its second day. More lines. More customers. More love. And Naomi stood in her kitchen, calling orders, perfecting plates, and doing what she was born to do. Create. Nourish. Love. That was enough. That was everything. That was her happy ending.